Hi, welcome to Diaries of a Lukewarm Christian. My name is Hans, and this is episode 5 of DLC. This episode is titled Beta Squad. Um, so this is a very interesting video for me, and it's definitely one of the more personal ones. This video is basically around what it means and what it feels like to be a man who is different, who is who is I wouldn't say is characterized as like a typical man in terms of like you need to be strong, authoritative, obviously in a good way, but I mean have leadership qualities, um, be self what to have a high self-esteem, to be able to command a room, um to be able to do all the manly things basically. And so this video is basically like just trying to look at um trying to find like different verses to try like to help people who are in their journey, people who have felt like they don't have those qualities, or they feel like they're less of a man because they're not confident, because they are not able to, because maybe they have they've got like negative experiences, and just stuff like that. A lot of this is basically like from my experience as well. um what does that mean? That's a good question. I feel like a lot of times, or how my biggest struggle in becoming a Christian was having to accept myself, in terms of having to accept my characteristics, having to accept certain things that I couldn't change about myself, and having to like allow God to having to surrender them to God. So, for example, an example is very recently, happened not once, but I think it was like twice. But basically, two people mentioned like you're a very gentle soul, and then this was like a few weeks back. Another time, another person was like you're a very gentle soul, and I struggled with that. I struggled with that so much because it was so hard for me to accept this part of me, because I didn't want to be gentle. I didn't feel like being gentle was like manly. And this is not even like when I was young. This is like now. This is very recent, like development. This is very recent, like having conversations with God, having conversations with myself, and just being like, just trying to find a way to like to like to link the realities of who I am, and like my like who what it means to be Hans, and like what I think I should be, and what I and also and that and what I think I should be is now also is informed by what I'm watching, what I'm listening to, the people who are around me, and all of these different things. And so there's just so much about that kind of like it really put me in a very difficult spot, because I just felt so I hated that I was seen as gentle. I hated it. Um and I think I think also another thing about being a man who is like different, or having more. Another thing also was like having more. I hope it was like no more like having more feminine qualities. I think I could put it like that, because someone else also said that to me as well. I have more feminine qualities, and it was just I hated that as well. But yeah, like someone said, I have more feminine qualities, and that was like, bruh, just hearing that, imagine someone tells you as a man like you have feminine qualities. That is just hidden. I hated hearing that. Um, and that's another thing that I had to wrestle with, with as well. It's having to deal with the fact that I'm not the typical man. What is the typical man? All these questions are just flying in my head right now. But like, just having that idea of like, And also a lot of that is informed by who you see growing up, who you were watching growing up. And obviously the first person is like your dad. If you're blessed enough to have like a dad, you have like a present father, like seeing that's also another like the biggest differences between you and your dad. That's another thing which also like impacted how I viewed myself as a man. So like seeing the differences in characteristics and how my father was able to like, you know, carry himself to be able to do certain things, to be able to care for a family, to be able to deal with like really difficult situations. And then there's me who's not able to do any of that. Like whenever I've ever been in like a situation which is very where it's time to man up, it's like I've always folded in those big situations. And so I think having that reference of like a father figure who's like who you're like different from, it was difficult, you know. And another thing which comes to mind as well was like I was speaking to this other person, and then they were like, you seem like you were sheltered growing up. And that was like it was another like reminder um of how again the character of who you are and what you think and what you want to be. It's like for me that like it kind of like it again just put that dent in you. It just hits it hurts to hear that because I'm obviously like I'm older now, so I'm at an age where like you're starting to think of like, oh, am I gonna get not even like married. You think about marriage, you think about like how you're going to be as you are going into like the more serious part of life, was like marriage, kids, jobs. And now a lot of and in this stage of my life now, everything relies on like it's a lot based on your character and how much you want it to be. Damn, what's this? Damn. And how much you want it to be, and the fact that you need to be the one to. There's a certain way you need to carry yourself as a man that like informs the way you move. And I've always just had that thing where I've struggled with that idea that and the idea of and the reality of me always failing to live up to that standard, basically. Um, um, yeah, so with that being said, I wanted us to go through a few I wanted to go through three verses just to kind of like just to get an understanding, just to go through some verses which I think can help a lot of. And this I just want like hopefully this video just like reaches a lot of men who I feel hopefully are in my situation, even if they're not, just gives a better understanding of like in whatever situation, in whatever thing or situation that you feel like you lack in, that it's okay, that these verses just help you to get through that. So first verse is Matthew 22, verse 34 to 40. So we're gonna start from verse 36. So basically the Pharisees had just gotten together and they were basically here to test God. So verse 36 says, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Okay, so that's Matthew 22, verse 34 to 40. Um, and with this verse particularly, I wanted us to focus on what Jesus points us to as the greatest commandment, and that is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And when he says that this is the greatest commandment, when I read it the first time, the word which like the word which like drew me closest was the word commandment. That commands are not like it's not something which is being asked of us, but it's something which we are required to do. And so when Jesus tells us that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, this is something which we have to do, which we are required to do all the time. To love the God with we love God, Lord our God, with all our mind, soul, and heart. And how it relates or how I related it to my situation was when we love the Lord our God with all our hearts, with all our minds, with all our soul, with everything of us, we are not leaving any space for insecurity. We are not leaving any space for doubt about am I a man or not. We're not leaving any doubt of we're not leaving any like we're not allowing any reflection on any negative things that people have said to us about you're not man enough, or you're weak, or you are too soft, or you are you have a lot of feminine qualities, or any of that. You are draining yourself of everything, every single thing, and you're putting the honor and the literally your mind, your focus and everything on God, where it belongs. And when it goes to God, it when you get when it's how it says all of this, your mind, your soul, and your heart. God informs each of that. So the doubt of am I a man or not goes away, because it's really replaced by yes, I am a man, because I understand, because I believe and I know that God made me, that God knitted me. When He knitted me in my mother's womb, He made sure that I was a man, that He was intentional about that fact. And so the doubt goes away when we put all the focus on God, and He begins to inform everything about us. For example, now it goes to, let's say, for example, our heart. God has, as I said before, the story about how some people, two people call me gentle. When I put all the onus on God, on the fact that God created me, I'm able to see that, or I'm able to learn from Him that that is something that He has put in my heart. Because when I surrender my heart to Him, He's able to show me that He has put that in me. That is actually a gift, to be able to be seen as gentle, to be able to be to for other people to be able to see that. That means that it's not just something that is like that it's not something that I have to work hard for. It's something that God has put in me. It's a gift, as I said, right? And so He has put that in my heart. And so when I drain my heart of all those doubts and all the desires of those evil desires of wanting to be that idea of a man, and those the ideas of what it could be or what it should mean, and it comes back to like and it comes back to when I love God with all my heart, I'm able to grasp, and I'm able to actually be very grateful for the fact that I have that gift of gentleness, and the fact that other people are able to see that in me. And so I am more grateful for that. And so I'm more grateful for that. And obviously, and then the next part was, and that is the first and the greatest commandment. Love the Lord God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And now the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And here it is and here for me, one of the biggest points that like as I was reading through it is like, love your neighbor as you love yourself. If all that's in me is insecurities, if all that's in me is jealousy, if all that's in me is envy, then all if all that's in me sorry if all that's in me is envy, if all that's in me is jealousy, if all that's in me is like is basically every negative thought, is sadness for what I think I should be, then how will I be able to love my neighbor? How will I be able to love each and every person? And so that's why it's important, why the first one is love the Lord God with all your heart. Because when you drain yourself of all of everything that I am, of me, and I allow God to be the one to fill me, I'm filled with His Spirit and His glory and His power. And so I have no regard for any need to be myself. I don't need to be being a man is like, it's to God, it's for His glory. It's not for me to feel like that desire to feel like I'm doing anything like that. It's all for God. And so I'm able to love my neighbor. I'm able to love the guy who passes, the guy who I feel is who is I'm able to love the people who I think are in a better place right now. I'm able to love each and every person because I trust and I've put all my love in the Lord. And so that's the next part I wanted to bring up to is that you can only love other people when you train yourself of all of those negative desires, all of those negative, those draining thoughts, and you just replace it with just loving God and you surrender all of that to Him. And you just put that to Him and you allow yourself to be able to love Him fully, and that will help us to love our neighbors. Um, and one of the biggest things also I wanted to bring up was how the idea of the idea of what of being a man is very it comes with a lot of responsibilities, right? And there's certain responsibilities which you can't which there's certain responsibilities, there's certain behaviors, there's certain um what's the other word, characteristics which you're going to need to as a man, like as you begin to just simply of the basis that you're a man, there's certain things that you're just gonna have to do. That whether you like it or not, you're gonna have to do this. You're gonna have to be able to serve. You're gonna be able to lead. You're gonna be able to have to love unconditionally. You're gonna have to love and you're gonna have to love your wife as Jesus loved the church. There's just certain things that you're just gonna have to do because that is what God has ordained you to do. And so, with those characteristics, I wanted to make note that it is okay not to be there. It is okay not to be at that point where you're able to fully walk in the man that God has designed you to be. And it is okay for that to look different. God made you unique. The way that you will be a man is not the way that I will be a man. It's not the way that another person will be a man. It's a way that you have to walk in the way that God has ordained to be, and you can only do that by walking with God. That's why I started off with the verse about loving God with all your heart, because you can only fully discover what it means to be a man when you're walking with the person who literally created you to be a man. So, um, I wanted to make note of the fact that sometimes there is a perception that being a man means that you are perfect. There is like this perception that being a man means that you're perfect. And with a lot of the responsibilities that you have, unfortunately, you're not going to have to be, but you're going to have to appear perfect. Um, okay, let me put, like for example, where I like go for internship, there are times when I'll do something or I'll go up or I'll stand up or I'll volunteer to go and speak to a group of people or to want to do something that will require us to come out of our comfort zone. And there was this time when people made like someone made a comment that, oh Hans, you're always ready to do all of like these things. Like you're not scared of that. While truthfully, and I'm sure like a lot of people who know me, I'm very shy. I'm very against doing anything that requires me to be in front of people. Doing flipping YouTube, doing this video basically is like um such a big uh it's such a big it's a big what? It's a source of not negativity, but it's hard for me to do naturally with the person that I am. But exactly, again, coming with God and asking God for help, that's the only reason why I'm able to do these videos. I'm able to put myself on these type of platforms. I'm able to do videos that I've done before, videos that I do on Instagram and all those places because of God, because there's certain things that I have to do. Not because I'm not scared of them, but it's simply because of God's strength. And so I wanted to bring this next verse, which is 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. And it says, but he said to me, and this is Jesus speaking to Paul after he asked him to take away the thorn in his flesh. He said, But he said to me, verse 9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. And I love this verse so much because it's amazing because it's literally like it there's so much freedom in this verse. When Jesus says to Paul, like says to all of us, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And particularly as men, he's not calling you to be perfect. You'll never be perfect. There's only one perfect human being. But when you call upon him in your time of weaknesses, obviously you will call him in your time of strength, but particularly when you call him in your time of weaknesses, when you come to him and say, hey, I have a problem with um with respecting women. When you come to him and say, "Hey, I have a problem um with with being confident in myself, being confident in my abilities as a man, in being confident in my identity as a man." Okay, now it's like literally my power is made perfect in weakness. My grace of it. It's like that's like Jesus like, okay, now we can work. Now we can work. So it's like the weakness is not a turn off. It's like it's an encouragement. It's a reminder that we need Jesus and we need him to like that we can work in partnership with him. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Actually, wow, that's actually a powerful one. Go back to Genesis 1. Going back to Genesis 1, what was like the first thing that when God designed Adam as the first man, like what is the first things that he told him? So okay, this is like all coming from my head. I think thank you Holy Spirit for that word. But like when God designed Adam, the first purpose that he had was to work in partnership with God. To begin by naming all the animals, to begin by naming all of the, to begin by like naming all the fruits and all of and to basically to tend to the garden and to work in partnership with God on to work under him. And so as a man, the first like you will forever be tied to God, even though you appear to be in a position of leadership. Your first priority is to God. Your first what's collaborator, your first feature, what is like other words that like show partnership is with God. So in every action that you take, you need to include God. You need to be very intentional about working with God. And especially when it comes and this allows this verse, especially Second Corinthians, makes a great notice that especially when it comes to your weakness, make sure that you allow allow his grace to be sufficient for you. Sufficient. That is like it literally is but that means enough, right? To my grace is sufficient for you. It is enough for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. My power is made perfect. That is such a wonderful word. That's literally it's so wonderful, honestly. Therefore, and then as a man, and I feel like I love this part where it says, therefore I'll boast more gladly about my weaknesses. But that is oh my God. How it's so hard to speak about weaknesses as a man. It's so hard. If there's one thing that to appear weak, to look weak, to seem weak, sucks. It's literally it sucks. It sucks. It's like, and those are the things you avoid with all like with everything in you. Like when you're walking in public, have you ever like when you stumble in public, like that, like the reason why that brings everything down is because it makes you appear weak, makes you appear look makes you look weak. And so it's like there's this there's this what's the word? There's this status quo that as a man you should always appear perfect, you should always appear cool, have everything on, that you should have everything on, everything what? everything should be on point. Everything should be on point. Your money should be right all the time. You should have like always appear to be, you shouldn't have any problems. Shouldn't be able to, like have experienced any other emotions apart from like positive ones, or to be always have like a problem solving mindset. But I love that it says, I will boast all the more gladly in my weakness. I feel like that's a call to me as well, to be boast more in my weaknesses and in like stuff that I'm not perfect in, you know, that I'm not perfect, that I wish I can do better, that I'm struggling with as well. There's so much that we can do that we need to learn, unlearn and unlearn as men. There's so much. And then the last part is like, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So that Christ's power may rest on me. Imagine Christ's power. That is wild to think about. Christ's power resting on me. Just that idea. That's a very exciting imagery. May rest on you. That is actually very. That's a really cool. That's a really cool way to word it. May rest on you. May rest on me. I don't know if that is rest. I don't know why, but like the word rest also like it makes me feel a type of way because it's not like it's there to like to energize you and to like to make you strong or to like it's not like it's not pushing any imagery of like I'm gonna make you more of a man and like you know it's literally like rest. It's not it's a calm it's a calming spirit. It's a calming word. And I love that when it says, and so Christ's power may rest, like when it says power and then rest, I like that as well. But, and I think that is like important that, like, as men, sometimes it always feels like we need to be seen as working, like ourselves. And I'm talking about like our bodies need to be seen as working or need to be seen as like to be productive. To our productivity comes from our perception and how people perceive us. And so sometimes something, and that's why like I'm going back to like, but like people who are seen as weak as men are usually like people who are quiet, people who are less prone to like to using fighting words, to fighting, to being aggressive, to being like, all the words that like point to you doing having to do a physical action. And so when I see rest, I feel like that's also another call to us to, as a man, to sometimes like when we are allowing God to work, to not be so quick to not be so quick to do action, to sometimes some to dwell in His grace. Sometimes something as simple as just dwelling in His grace, to resting in His grace, allowing His power to rest in us, but on us, and us to rest in Him, to rest in that identity that as long as Jesus knows that we're good, that means we're good. And it doesn't matter if we're perceived to be weak. It doesn't matter if we're perceived to be um I was about to say a bad word. To be perceived to be soft, to be perceived to be um girly, to be perceived to be not man enough. Like, let us be able to rest in the fact that Christ's power is always like there to rest in us, and His grace is sufficient for us. So we don't have to extend ourselves. In fact, it would be foolish for us to extend ourselves and to try and like to seek that man, this is what it means. Like to seek that perception of a man from usually other people. Like let's try more to rest in Him, right? Um, so I think the it's okay. Trying to get a third verse. Okay, it's loaded. Yeah. So I think like with that being said, with that being said, I hope that this message is able to like to touch as many men as possible who are like feeling like they're not enough, who are feeling like they are like their identity is not assured because of what maybe their characteristic is, or what other people have told them that they are. I hope that is able to like encourage you in your journey, that like wherever you are, like God loves you, and like he's so intimately involved in how you are, in who you are, and nothing has happened, nothing has ever happened to you, nothing has ever been added to your character, nothing has ever been taken out of your character, that God is not working to improve or to continue to enhance in you. So, and that leads us to the last verse, which is Romans 8 verse 28. And it's a one sentence verse, and it says, verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Say it one more time. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That is powerful. How it just looks is like when you hear like when you see how, and we know that God works all things for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I think that last bit especially, who have been called according to his purpose. Whether you like it or not, in fact, whether you like it or not, whether whether other people have told you positively or negatively, you have been called according to his purpose to be a man. So there's no doubt in that. You have been called according to God to be a man. And so it's your responsibility. And I pray that it will be your like joy to be able to learn what it means to be a man, and to be called to, and to be able to learn what your purpose is. And a verse or a video, another video that I'd like really like to also to point to you, each and every one of you, to watch is a video by Todo. It's a channel called It's For God. So it speaks about purpose. It speaks about finding your purpose and discovering your talents and gifts. And I feel like that would be a really good resource for you to discover, like as a man, what is it? What are like some of the talents that you have? What are some of the gifts that you have? What are some of the way? How can you discover them? How can you partner with God to be able to discover them? So I really like. I don't know if I'll be able to put it down, but I'll try and put it down there as well. But you have been called according to his purpose. It is God's purpose. And that's why I said again is that you have to, once you surrender all of you, all of your negative feelings, all of your negative thoughts, every negative things that people have said to you, to God, he's able to come into you, and he's able to take that away, and he's able to instill in us his purpose, and we're able to understand his purpose better. And we say all things God works for the good of those who love him. All things God works and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. So your the characteristics that people have said makes you soft. The characteristics that people have said makes you more feminine. The characteristic that people have told you makes you um what less off of whatever, right? We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. There's a reason why God has put those in you. There's a reason why God has placed those specific characteristics in you. And so when we know that all things work and all things God works for the good of those who love him, that he's going to work through them. He's going to work through each of those things to be able to hide, and for his glory, and he's going to highlight his glory through you. So I hope that so just in conclusion, I hope that this video is just able to encourage you to be able to go to God and to understand and to love who you are, to enjoy your characters, to enjoy, the things which maybe you may not have seen before, but it's like these gifts and these like amazing like some things that God has put in you. and you can like come to him more, and you begin to be able to continue to now work with him to be able to honor him and to glorify his name. So that is the video for today. 35 minutes in, okay. A bit of a long one, but I hope that I've been able to, touch on maybe feelings that you've had or stuff that you've been going through or anything that, even if you're not going through, even if you feel like you sorted as a man, I hope that it's able to like to to strengthen you. If it's able to strengthen you, then I pray it's strengthen you. It's able to lift you up from like a place of despair, and I pray it lifts you up from a place of despair. And it's like God's way to just remind you who you are. And it's not me, it's not this channel, it's not anything about me. It's just God being able to like speak to you more and to call you to Him, because He's the only one who can like really touch your heart the way that it needs to be touched. All right. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you get this far, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.